Good evening. I would like to introduce myself as S.K. Rangaswamy, the president of IIA Madras chapter and also a chartered accountant come cost accountant. It is indeed an honor and privilege to have Mr. Mahesh Krishnan, who will be taking us on the case study on ethics. And a brief word about introduction about Mahesh Krishnan. He is a partner in the chartered accountant firm R.G.N. Price and Co. and almost has 3 decades of experience in assurance and attest functions with specialization in gap convergence services for companies spanning across various industries ranging from automotive ancillaries to IT and ITES. By profession, qualification is a chartered accountant, cost accountant, SEMA UK, and also completed diploma in information security audit of the ICAI and also as a post-qualification course on valuation again by ICAI. He has actively participated in many training programs on bank audits, accounting and auditing standards, and also has been involved in preparation of guidance notes and accounting standards evolvement. He has served as the secretary of the Society of Auditors Chennai from 2016 to 2024 and also as a special invitee of the Accounting Standards Board of the ICAI. He has also served as a technical reviewer of the QRB and FRRB. And Mr. Mahesh, it's indeed I'm privileged to invite you to take this session on ethics, and it's over to you. Please give Mr. Mahesh a welcome round of applause.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rangaswamy, is president of the chapter president of the Madras chapter of IIA. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Ashish Jawar and also tech support Mr. Saranan, also Mr. Vidyadharan sir and Deepika, who initially called me for this particular program. It's really a privilege for me to be here and share my thoughts on this particular topic of ethics, which is this is a topic which is not something of a technical nature or something all of us would know about this particular topic. It's more like a refresher type of a discussion that will happen. And of course, it's a very, very important topic also at the same time, I would say. And most of the professional organizations have this particular topic as a mandatory aspect in terms of ensuring that we remind ourselves, at least on annual basis, on what we have to stand for other aspects. This reminds me of a particular incident about 4 or 5 years back when I had a particular troubling issue on the back or something like that, and went to the doctor and said there was some problem and all those things. And then he said, "Have you tested yourself for vitamin D aspect because you're doing a desk job? Vitamin D aspect is vitamin D could be a deficiency aspect." And then when we had a test and all those things, and I started taking some tablets for that, and immediately the issue disappeared. I was just thinking it's very similar to that. Ethics is something which is part of a system which should be there in the system, and if you don't have it at a particular point of time, you'll start having all type of problems, and it'll will not know why it is. So ethics is a topic which is should be in our fiber, in our moral fiber, in our system itself. That's something which I thought I should basically touch upon before I start my particular. I also have a presentation here. Okay. So the first thing I want to ask the participants, I would like the participants also to respond to me, and it's more of a discussion, as I said. So the first question I want to ask you all is, what do you mean? What do you think ethics is all about? And please don't Google. Remember, this is an ethics program. I would like to have some feedback on what do you think is this. What do you mean by ethics? What strikes you first when you say ethics? Can I have some feedback on this in the chat box, please? Values, yes. I think Mr. Ashish, thank you for igniting the flow. I think now the flow will come from all the participants. So hopefully. So ethics is something where basically people say it's a philosophy, how you differentiate between what is right, what is wrong, and it comes from the old ancient many of the our integrity. Thank you for that. So the ethos, which means character or the personal disposition, how we react to things, how do we react to different scenarios, all these aspects. Moral play is something that is also used. Though people argue that ethics and morality have different dimensions also. Of course, theoretically, we can always keep discussing about this, but then how we look at it in the practical scenarios is what is more important also. So, as you know, ethics basically is, as the first thing came, value driven. That's something which is very important. And what is ethical varies amongst different people. The moral reasoning approaches could be different. We'll come to that also a little later. And it can vary across cultures. Uh, just to give an example, if you take in India, if you're driving a car, if you drive a car in the USA, and you have a child with you, it's important that not only legal aspect, even they say it's ethical. People frown upon you if you don't put the child in the back seat, or if the child is less than a particular age, put them in a particular specific child seat and strap them across and other aspects. Whereas in India, if you look at it, the parent may take the child in the lap and drive the car also. They don't feel that it's a big issue, it's safety issue. It's again the mindset that is coming. So that is something which is very important. What could be ethical, what could be right and wrong, is looked at in different cultures, different situations, different ways. So that is something as professionals we need to understand the cultural aspects also. But at the same time, the yardsticks are not cannot be changed too much. But there are legal flavors also to the aspects, and we cannot move too away from the normal yardstick. That's something that I thought we should look into. And there are a lot of ethical dilemmas which can come, which can test our personal traits, personal ethics, values, and other aspects, how to go about. We will see some practical aspects in this some case studies also. And of course, when people have tendencies to rationalize unethical behaviors also, just like you have your fraud triangle and other aspects where people rationalize, even unethical places, people will say, okay, this is why I did it, try to justify themselves. We need to be aware of this situation to ensure that we do not fall into that particular trap also. So again, what it means to be ethical. So as I said, values is something which is very important. Choosing the right over the wrong, respecting others' rights, not interfering with others' rights. Somebody will say that our boundaries stop when somebody else's nose starts. So very similar to that, we need to look into that, and promoting good consequences, and having a fair oversight of other aspects, and cultivating good character, upbringing. All these aspects are also looked into this. So ensure that even when nobody is watching, we walk the right path. Uh, Doing good when no one is watching. This is another aspect. Of course, in terms of the moral reasoning, others, the different perspectives that we have on the term of ethics. You have individual view, for example, if you come across a particular problem, you say, will this affect a particular person, short term, long term, one's own long term self interest or somebody else's? That is one aspect. Then the moral right view is it fundamentally right in terms of for the all human beings, and also in terms of the greatest good of for the people, and the justice view, is it fair, is it impartial? These are the different type of factors that come into it. I know it sounds a little theoretical, but I'm sure we can go to some examples later down the line also. Cultural relativism, and there's no one right way to behave. It could be the cultural context to determine ethical behavior and other aspects. Simply put, in some cultures, for example, just again a very simple example I'll give in some cultures, when you have it's a particular senior person comes into the room, we get up, right? That happens. It may not happen in an office setting. It may happen in a place in an informal setting. It may happen also. At the same time, in other places like in different countries, it may not be so. They may not see the need to get up. It all depends on, again, the upbringing, the cultural setting that is there in different countries, different parts of the world, different locations also. That's why we say that when in Rome, do as Romans do. And nothing that this particular ethics is superior to the other one or something like that. That is also something which I think we cannot compare, but we need to ensure that we are aware of the different cultural settings which are there in the world also. So is it true or false? Ethics has to do with whether my feelings are right or wrong. Is ethics all about feelings? What do you feel? True or false? If I feel that this is something right or wrong, is that sufficient? It is largely true, but we must realize that sometimes our feelings can cloud the judgment. We can have a biased view. That's something that we need to do.
I would just like to inform all participants that the chat box is now open, so you could please feel free to make your responses. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ethics has to do with religious beliefs. How far do you think this statement is right? Is it true, false, partially true? It can be linked to religion, but then again, it's much more than this. If you look at different religions, they have the concept of ethics, the way in which you have to go about doing things. You have in the Christian the ethics are there in the Bible. It talks about uh, sin, willful sin. In Quran, you have a lot of terms like khair, masalhat, bir. All these terms are there in the Quran, which talks about how one should behave and what one should not do, other aspects. There are 99 verses in Quran. I've just put out some 20 of them here and different things. So from time immemorial, there are scriptures which are also there in terms of asking us how to go about in different facets of life, personal life, in office, and other aspects also. The Bhagavad Gita also tells us, do your duty, do it with detachment. That is something which is very, very important when you see later on in places like where Noklar, where you have the uh, consideration of laws and regulations, whether we should report a particular incident or not. These are the things that can come to our mind in terms of strengthening our resolve on what is the right way of doing things. Discharge duty without favor or favor. And you do your work, don't worry about the end result. That is something again which is there, whether it is positive or negative. And you have the Taittiriya Mantra Upanishad also, which talks about the exhortation from the teacher to the student. It says, for example, in Sanskrit, it says, Satyam Vada Dharmam Tara. So speak the truth, follow Dharma, treat your mother, father as well. All these aspects are there which are bringing in certain amount of moral fiber into the individual. And this is there right from time immemorial, the history, and again, in different walks of life, different religions also. That's something that I just wanted to highlight over here. Law and ethics. How many of us believe that being ethical is doing what the law always requires? Is it true or false? Or is it 50% true? Just think about it. In in for example, Mr. Alak, you raised your hand. Unfortunately, you can probably put in the chat box. I'm just
I,
giving an example. Uh,
I, yeah, I think people are able to post their questions, but they are still not able to put it on the chat box. So you may also want to see the question and answers there.
yeah. Is there any questions? You can put in the chat box. I will look into it. You
Sure.
take a place where it's a crowded street. There is a median and there is a gap in the median. Uh, Earlier, there was a no U-turn board over there, but then the board is now not there. So, and a person knows that if he takes a U-turn there, he's likely to disrupt traffic on both sides because he cannot just take an easy U-turn. he needs to do a 3-point or 4-point turn, which will stop traffic either on both sides of the road. So can you take a view that earlier there was a no U-turn board, today there is no U-turn board, that means I'm allowed to take a U-turn? Or can somebody think the U-turn, no U-turn board just fell down or it just disappeared for some reason? Unless there is a U-turn specifically given, I will not take a U-turn. So different people can take different aspects, and there not be a right answer, because the person taking a U-turn saying that there is no U-turn board may be in his perspective right. So this type of scenarios could be there in the real life in terms of we need to be aware of that, and how do we react in those scenarios? Is it just that we take our own views, or we look into others' views, a broad spectrum? These are the aspects, again, our code of ethics and all tell us what to do. Sometimes the laws may be unethical. That is also there. Any examples you can give where there is a possibility that laws may be unethical or moving more towards that? When we say unethical, we're looking at the moral fiber, all those aspects also. Any examples? Anybody, anything that you can think of? So these are some places where there's always a debate on. You have euthanasia, you have the treatment of a living will in different parts of the world, capital punishment, very stringent punishment in some parts of the world, and usage of the digital footprints post the physical footprint. After somebody passes away, how do we treat the digital footprints, other aspects? So these are places where there could be laws, or there may not be laws, but what is the right way of doing things? Could we still use a person's thing? You today with artificial intelligence and everything coming, you can use a person's appearance or a voice to, you know, use it in the current context. But before doing that, what should we do? How do we go about it? Even if laws are silent, can we go ahead just like that? Or is there any process for that? In a recent movie, I think when they want to bring back somebody's voice, they went to the family, got some permission, other aspects. Even though there are not many laws around this particular subject, I think people did the right thing, the way in which they approached the whole aspect. So these are some places where there could be a conflict between the laws and ethics. And as auditors, internal auditors, as statutory auditors, we need to be aware of this aspect in our mind while taking decisions. Just a small example here. There is a particular air cargo complex where a particular consignment came in as a heat measuring instrument. The particular officer had a doubt over the classification. So he called a particular person and asked them for a write-up of this particular consignment. What is it? And the write-up talked about technical specifications of the machines, everything. And then the importer entity, the owner himself came and with that catalog explained the particular product and other aspects. Fortunately or unfortunately, the person who was in our cargo complex, the official, was an engineer, technical engineer in other aspects. And he found that it was not a heat measuring instrument, it's actually a pyrometer which measures temperature. He knew the difference between temperature and heat and other aspects. And therefore, this had a different classification in the customs and a higher rate of duty also. So he asked this appraiser to collect the duty for that particular machine. And similar as machines were also imported in the last few years or something. But then they had a rule that they can only go back to 6 months and collect it. But then in this case, the importer, being an ethical person, said he would not only go back to 6 months, but also go beyond 6 months and make the payment. It may be a very unusual importer who goes beyond the law also in terms of ethics. But then can we say that law was short of ethics in this particular case? There could be different aspects because you have something called the law of limitations, and for some good reason they put 6 months. But then if somebody wants to go beyond law and act in an ethical manner, there's one example where we can talk about that there is a slight difference between law and ethics. So there's a fine difference over there. I just thought I should highlight it with this example here. On the flip side, a revenue officer says that you're always at loggerheads with taxpayers. That is his view, and says that it's my dharma to collect as much revenue as possible within the legal framework of the tax laws and other aspects, while the taxpayers will follow tax planning as per the income tax laws, but sometimes they may go through illegal means in terms of tax evasion also. There's always a conflict. And if there isn't any, if there is only some fear of punishment, raids, if that is not there, people will hardly pay their taxes honestly. This is the view which somebody was talking about in some places. So again, here you have the law, you view that the law has to impose upon the taxpayers to be ethical, to pay the right taxes and other aspects. So there's another place where we're talking about a practical interplay between your laws and also the ethical scenario also. Ethical ethics also consists of the standards of behavior our society expects. So yes, this is true. And why is ethics important? So today, if you look at it, the credibility, as you said, the standards of the organization, the credibility is something which is that the more the organization is looked at as a credible organization, the stature will increase, its value will increase, not only from an emotional context, but also from uh, financial aspect also. Today you have a case, the news about a large conglomerate where has got into some issues on ethical aspects, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of USA. You also have a financial impact on that. Immediately the share price falls down, other aspects. But then more than that, more than the financial aspect, the how the entity is viewed at by its suppliers, by the customers, by the employees, that particular value that is there cannot be easily determined. It goes beyond your, for the employee, it goes beyond the salary that he gets, all these aspects. Just like the right environment, an ethical organization will always be preferred. So it's very important that the organization brings in the credibility. It also brings the mutual trust across people in the organization and also from organization to organization, that aspects. Financial performances automatically increase by all these smoothening of the supply chain, customer base, how the statutory authorities perceive it, all those aspects, and also improves decision making throughout the organization. There is no complexity in terms of we do what is the right aspect uh, without circumvented laws, other aspects. It's easy to forge the path of decision making also once you have your policies set right in terms of the ethics and other code and all those things also. So as I said, same thing, promotes the reputation. It also gives the code itself. So basically the ethics, and you have a code of ethics. So the code of ethics also helps you to have guidance for ethical decision making. So if you have a doubt, you go back to the code, go back to your policy and see what it says. It will be able to help you out. And also legitimizes the entire ethics by having a specific code. So almost all organizations have codes and other aspects. Again, I just thought I should talk about different types of ethics. You have what you call as business ethics. That is what we see in terms of the moral principles, policies, the values that govern the way in which all of us do business, the companies and individual exercise. And as auditors, we gauge many of these factors as part of our auditing practices also. And of course, you have normative ethics in terms of the moral philosophy and other criteria of what is wrong and right, moral aspects. So for example, you have a legal aspects of abortion. What are the moral aspects of it? It's just like the other one I thought about euthanasia and other aspects. This is all very similar to that. And you also have the different branch called the applied ethics, where in terms of bioethics, all these aspects are also there. How much we can, for example, cloning, which is there, in terms of how technology and law and all those things develop over a period of time. These are different types of ethics also, which are there are different paradigms of ethics, I should say. There are ethics in various facets of life and other aspects. Of course, as professionals, we are in a particular environment, whether it's an internal auditor or a statutory auditor or a lawyer, we all have we are giving services. So I'm going to ask a question now in terms of ethics. If you take the environment of nursing, doctors and nursing, what type of ethics do you feel should be there? You take doctors basically help you to treat you for illness, but then the nurses help you along to recover and all those aspects. So there are different types of ethics for doctor, for nurse, other aspects. I'm just giving a small example. In terms of what do you think should be the factors of ethics for the nursing syllabus or something like that? One example could be helping the patient. Any thoughts on this? Just put it down here because different facets of life have different ethics. So in terms of nursing, if you see, autonomy is something which they look at it. They take an oath before starting practice. Yes, sir, that's right. To cure patients. Medicine usage, prescription should be real. Yes, absolutely right. So these are the things which are here in terms of they have given more words in terms of autonomy, beneficence, justice, null maleficence, dilemma. There are some dilemmas also. So if you look at the autonomy, it says the patient has a right to make the decisions, how they want to go about their own beliefs and values. At the same time, beneficence is something where they say minimize the harm, promote good towards the patient. For example, keeping up the side rails and all those things. You have a sometimes you have to in emergency situations have an emergency procedure or something which may look harmful, but at that particular point of time, that may be the right thing to do to save the patient also. So there are a lot of dilemmas and other aspects also over there. And justice that all patients have a right to be treated fair and equally. You cannot distinguish patients based on their color, based on their whether they're male or female, or based on their the amount of wealth they have, or the stage of their illness. All these aspects may not be required. Everybody has to be treated equally. Avoid causing harm to patients with non-maleficence. There are a lot of dilemmas also. So these are all talked about in the code of ethics for nursing. I just thought to bring in different flavors over here. For example, for the police, they have to have courage. That's one of the important aspects. Respect, empathy for the public service. These are the different factors that come in from their line of activities and things. As somebody said, they take the oath, the Hippocratic oath, which is there, which is taken. It's again from Greek medical method. It's not mythology. It's actually Greek medical texts have this particular oath in terms of they have to swear by and say that yes, we will heal people and uphold ethical standards and all those aspects. In terms of teachers, also there are different types of codes of ethics. UNESCO has given different things like the guiding principles are the teacher and the state, the teacher and the community, the teacher and the profession, and higher authorities in the profession. For each of these aspects, with the teacher is dealing with the people, the teacher and the learners, basically the students, teachers and the parents of the students, and teacher as a person per se also, not in the when they're teaching in the school or education institution, even outside how they should be. We also have that many places, not only as a chartered accountant or an internal auditor or a cost accountant, not only in our way of doing the audits and other aspects. In general, also how we have to behave is something which is definitely there in all the code of ethics. So teachers also have this type of different aspects. This has come out. There are different codes of ethics in different countries and different education institutions, but this is from the United Nations Educational Organization. And we all have ethical dilemmas on a day-to-day life also. Some of these are like this. Should parents monitor teens' social media activities? If we start debating that, I think the next 1 hour will go for that itself. So, and in terms of honesty in communication, we have a dilemma in terms of telling a person, somebody brings you something cooked, like you say the food is very nice, even though it did not have salt or it didn't taste well or it's undercooked, you are being just being nice, or should you be honest? It's a dilemma that you have. If you are nice and say it is good and all those things, and later on that person eats it and finds that it is not nice, how will they look at it? So it's again a dilemma which is there. Workplace integrity, choosing whether to report a coworker for any unethical behavior. It could be anything. It could be like there was one particular case, even at office, we had a outside consultant working with us with the knowledge of the client. But then later on, he was asking the client whether he can do some other work or something like that. Is that allowed from him? If he does that, what should our colleagues do? They will not know what to do. So we need to have codes of ethics. We need to have training for all those aspects and all. Reporting of an accident should we? How do we do it? In day-to-day life, we just leave it and move away, or should we report? Should we, if we have seen a particular person that is responsible for that, should we go forward and telling it? So all these aspects are there. It even simple aspect like the shopping cart after the unloading, do you leave it there? If you just leave it outside, you're going to disrupt the other people also. That is also part of ethics and other aspects. So these are all the ethical dilemmas that we face. Small aspects, big aspects which will be there, but the decision making, it's all based on certain common factors which are there also. Of course, for all the corporate professionals, as I said, be it a internal auditor or external auditor, internal auditor is part of the organization, the cost accountant, a valuer, anybody will be having their own sets of codes of ethics. I also have implementation guides for the codes of ethics also. Many of the corporate professionals and the institutes have that. Most of the key factors touch upon this integrity, objectivity, competence, confidentiality, and professional behavior. I'm sure each and every one of us are well versed in all these factors. Ethical leadership is something that I want to touch upon. So, when you're a leader, we need to ensure that we are honest, we are ethical. The perception also is very important. Perception doesn't mean that it's only outside, but inside it could be different. We should be leading. See, what should be the inside should also be properly communicated outside, telling the truth, even sometimes admitting failure, not trying to cover it up, saying sorry to a colleague. So all these aspects are there in ethical leadership. So ethical leadership is a different paradigm. You may be a leader in terms of being a very good technical person or a very articulate person, or you're able to convince people or get more clients, whatever it is. All those aspects are there. But then ethically, how are we? Are we leaders? Each one of us should strive to become ethical leaders is something that we need to look into. And ethical leadership is there not only the individual level, but also on the entity level. That's something which is very important. And the leadership commitment, which is there in terms of the conduct, how we do it, and the type of values that we take, the stand that we take in different scenarios, all these things, ethos, that's what we talk about ethos. Over a period of time, the organization will build up in different scenarios over a period of time, they will take certain decisions and certain principle stands. How those decisions are taken and what is the effect of that, it will all add up to see what the entity is all about and what the people in the entity are all about. So today we know, we see different organizations, we have certain perceptions of those particular organizations also. These are the different factors that go into that. Again, we have to go to the brass tacks in terms of ensuring that the ethics initiatives are visible, it is articulated properly. If there are violations, corrective action is taken also. We should not shy away from that. And also allocating resources to ethics management programs, training, development, all those aspects which are there. And leadership commitment is also to ensure that the framework is there, the structure is kept, the capacity building is also very, very important as part of the organizations to ensure that the ethics are not just at the individual level, but there is a framework in which the people in the organization can lean upon to have guidance, to have support also. That is something which is very important. When you talk about leadership decision, other aspects, just a small case study. A group of children are playing near two railway tracks. One of the railway tracks is not used. The other one is an operational track. So you see that train is coming and you are just behind the track interchange. So there are 4 or 5 children playing in the track where the train normally goes. And there is one child who knows that this track will not be used, and he's playing in the unused track. So what do we do? How many of us will allow the train to go the usual course, maybe putting the 5 children at risk, only hope that they will jump off the track? Or do you minimize the damage by changing the track? So will you leave it as it is, or will you change the track? Will you do the action of changing the track? Yes or no? Leave it as it is. Leave it to karma. Try flashing with red cloth. Oh, that's from some movie, I think. Okay. No, leave it as it is. Very difficult. Yeah, that's why, sir, very difficult choices. So that's why the exercise of choice at that particular point, we cannot go back to factors and think we have to immediately work. So what is inside us should come out. The type of training that we had over a period of time should soak into us, and that action should come the split second. So this is a account. You can keep discussing on this, but this is one discussion that was good. This is the greatest good. Is it right? So that was what is the discussion. Do you want to choose to divert the course and sacrifice only one child? 5 children are saved. Is that right? The unused track may not be working. The train may meet with accident. The kid was playing with the conviction. Absolutely fine. Absolutely. I think that's why I said the child that chose to play on that unused track had made the right decision because it's a safe place, and now he's put to peril. How is that thing? So this type of dilemma is there, and we have said it's the greatest good. 5 people are saved. This child is put to risk. We still try to see how to save him. And as we got this particular thing from Chris, if the train was diverted and the lone child will have a problem, but then the train itself is put to peril. So we don't know what we say is the greatest good at this point. May have a different perception that we may not have thought about also. So these are the type of thing what life throws at us, tough decisions that we need to take. It could be, this is of course a very hypothetical example, but then I think it drives home the point in terms of we need to pause for a moment. But the thing is, do we have time to pause? There are, thank God, I would say that we are all accountants, auditors. Most of it is post facto. We have time to think. Uh, a doctor or a policeman will have to act immediately in a split second. So we are not in that scenario. But having said that, again, we are all in positions of responsibility because in entities, in terms of compliance, laws and regulations, financial impact, those will still have a lot of implications. Even though we're not saving lives directly, yes, indirectly, yes, there are implications over there also. Daily ethical tests in the field of medicine. As I said, in terms of medical field is very, very important. So this is one aspect. Another case where a 17-year boy is brought to the emergency room and he needs a heart transplant. Older lady is also brought. She also needs a heart transplant. The characteristics are different. The boy is unfortunately on drugs, drug addict. He may overdose tomorrow. You do not know. The old lady is in 70s, very active. The children are there, grandchildren are there, but she has not finalized the will, is what we understand. Both of them need a heart transplant, but there's only one heart. Now, and that heart can be used immediately in that particular hospital. We cannot take it out also. So there's no question of any waiting line or something like that. How do we look at it? Do we give the heart to the boy because he's a young guy, or to the older lady? What would your choice be? I'm waiting to get some answers in the chat box. First come basis, the boy. So in this case, difficulty in choice, it is easy to choose but right and wrong, but life is not always black and white. So one doctor said, of course, I'm not giving an answer to that. There is no specific answer. But then this doctor says I was in these type of situations and more often decisions became easier for me. First time I was really struggling what to do. The thing is, people may realize that after some time they may not develop a conscience. So you're getting too reckless. So that is another aspect which sometimes people will think. So those are the places where we need to help them from the framework to say that no, come back, refresh yourself, regenerate yourself, bring back your moral compass in case you feel you're not able to judge or you feel that you're judging too hastily without any or you're doing it recklessly in all those aspects. They would need advice, they would need counseling and other aspects also. That is very similar even in our situation as internal auditors, other aspects. Sometimes there could be some bad decisions taken, and then their entire thing, confidence will go. How to bring back that confidence? These are the aspects that I think we should discuss within the organizations also. So there they are that's why they say that look at what the perspectives are from different people. As we said in the previous example, we were talking about the one boy and the five boys, but somebody said, what about the entire train? Somebody has not talked about that particular perspective. So we have to look at all the perspectives and then strike a balance. That's very important and find a middle ground if it's possible and be ready for future situations also. So these are the aspects that I think we should look into in terms of leadership, in terms of choices that we need to make and certain scenarios. Sometimes we have time to make the choice. Sometimes it has to be made in a split second also. Rotary also has something called the four-way test. I remember earlier. So I just thought, this is again, if you look at it, the truth is something which is very important. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it bring goodwill? Is it beneficial? These are the aspects which I thought. It has a lot of things on overview on the what we're talking about in terms of ethics. I just thought I should mention it here. Of course, we have drivers of unethical strategies and business behaviors where people think that business is business. And ethics does not come into the picture. We see a lot of movies where there's a big business guy who does an unethical manner, and the hero somehow brings the situation right and all those things. So, of course, I don't have to say more about it over here. And overzealous pursuit of personal gain, heavy pressure on managers. So, these are all things which are there, which can put pressure on people. We have to be aware of these aspects and see how to wean them off these fresh pressures and other aspects to ensure that they are able to walk the right path so that there is no non-compliance, or if there has been non-compliance, what we need to do. So we need to be aware of these type of factors that could be triggered also in terms of unethical strategies, the drivers which are there also. And people, I said, they will always try to rationalize. I'm not a big deal, not very illegal compared to what others are doing. This nothing, and I have everybody's interest in mind. So somebody says I stole because somebody was not well. I had to help them. It's in the best interest only I did. So there's nothing wrong. Nobody will find out, or the organization will somehow protect me, or some rationalization will happen. So we need to be aware when we face certain scenarios where we find there are some unethical behavior, unethical aspects, and we talk to people. People may get defensive or aggressive in terms of bringing these type of aspects. And if we are aware of these aspects, we should slowly tell them that these are not really factors that can be a base for your decision making. Make them understand that, and that will be the first step towards moving from case of non-compliance towards compliance also. Organizational ethics. So the personal and contextual factors, these are all influence the ethical conduct. In terms of training is something which is very, very important. And that's why we have this type of program where we can, not that all of us don't know what is ethics. We need some time to sit down and probably ruminate on ethics, maybe meditate on ethics or just talk about ethics for some time. This will set our minds thinking of what we are doing, what we have been doing the last 12 months. Is there any place where we could have done better? Things like that. So that is the only purpose of having this type of training programs. And the organization, the protection of the whistleblowers is something which is very, very important. And managers, leadership, as we said. And also, it's very important to have formal code of ethics. We cannot say that in the ethos of the organizations like this, we always have everything, but it's unwritten, but this is how what we are. That may not be sufficient. We should have formal codes of ethics and set standards for ethical conduct. We should bring it down and put pen on paper and have a written code, which also needs to be revisited over the time. For example, today, even for internal audit and other aspects, with artificial intelligence coming in, we may have to change the code of ethics to cover those aspects also. How do we react to that? You have report writing through AI, you have inherent bias or uh, bias without the knowledge of the person using the AI. So these are all new developments that are happening. So it's also important that the standards of ethical conduct and code of ethics are also revisited once in a way. That's also very important. Any questions till now? Most of it has been theoretical, but of course, some case studies were there. Any questions, any thoughts by anybody? Please put in the chat box. Any questions? Okay, I've got a thing of global IA standards effective from 2025, and it is new domain too, which covers ethics and professionalism as part of the standards. Honesty and courage. The new one is this domain, in addition to what was there in the COE earlier. Okay, I have the honesty and courage to tell you, sir, I have not gone through that. Honestly, I was not aware of that. Is this part of global IA standards? I'm sorry, I didn't. I thought I went to the IIA website, but I didn't latch upon this particular aspect. But then nothing is lost. We have one more ethics program, I think next month happening from IIA Madras chapter. Hopefully, the speaker there can cover this aspect. So I will give it a well left for the time being and move on. But thank you for the input. I'm sure it will be useful for the organizers to also warn the other next speaker who's going to speak on this also. And if it is possible, I'll try to have a small write-up on this aspect and try to circulate it through the IA executives here. So in terms of business case study also, why you should have ethical behavior? Is it only quality? No, even in an inverse way, if somebody want to tell, you should say okay, you have costs, you have leveling costs in terms of government fines, civil penalties. If you do something, the lowest stock price, as we see today in a particular organization, the stock price has just crashed. So these are all also compelling events. These are not the important things in terms of saying that we should not fear the fine and act ethically. Even without it, we should act ethically. But then these are also factors that we need to consider. So the costs are there in terms of if you don't follow ethical aspects, you will have fines, you have risk of all these aspects, something that the organization should be aware of, and it should drum into the people in terms of especially the top managers and other aspects. Legal and investigative costs, the cost of providing remedial education, ethics training, all these aspects would be there. Some of these costs are good costs and some of them are avoidable aspects. Loss of customers, loss of reputation, all these things have a cost on the company, either directly in a financial cost or in terms of a qualitative or aspects also which are there. So these are also something which needs to be uh, brought in by the organizations, factored in by the organizations to ensure that they are at a high level of ethical levels, governance, and other aspects. And you also have ethics beyond the legal entity. It's not enough if the entity alone is ethical, the people there, the executives there, the workers and employees are ethical. We also look at the other relationship We don't work in isolation in terms of supply chain relationship, in terms of whom they deal with is very important. Example is like in Cadbury's had a lot of challenge when they were having sourcing their the beans. They should have a slave-free, child labor-free plantations, and they had a practical dilemma over there because many of the sourcing of the beans were from small plantations where they could really not know whether it is the slave-free or child labor, which are in rural places. And sometimes when they get the consignment, they do not know this bean has been sourced from which particular plantation also. So they had a lot of practical dilemma issues and how they approach it. It's a separate case study by itself. So I just wanted to touch upon that to see, just to tell you, yes, there are practical issues which are there. People are aware of. Yes, the problem is there, but I'm not able to see how exactly I can overcome the problem. I'll do a lot, but I'm not be able to guarantee 100% error-free that I'm in the right path, right place. There's something which is there. Coffee also had a similar thing in terms of fair trade and other aspects. So these places is something which goes, even though I, as a legal entity, am very ethical and all those things, if I have to deal with other people whom I'm associated with, those aspects are also very important. And I think every organization should factor these aspects in terms of who are the different stakeholders who are there around the entity and ensure that they are in the right place over there also, based on their risk appetite, based on the industry that they are operating, all these aspects. Like this choice of decision making, business ethics are also there in terms of should a firm release a life-saving drug immediately after limited testing? We had a lot of discussions on this during COVID. Advertising aimed at children, should it be restrained? Sometimes it brings unnecessary conflict. Children want to get a particular item because it is advertised, but they're not able to get it. The parents feel the pinch, or it may not be the right toy or anything that they have to get. Animal testing for products and ingredients is the right way. Today we have movies which say that no animal was harmed. Earlier days it was a different aspects. So again, the same place, what is right, what is wrong, changes over a period of time. Even for space, when we send rockets to space, first I think only the Russians could what sending animals to, and the first or second animal that went to space did not survive. Was it ethical? All those things, the greater good, all these questions again come here also. For decisions have to be taken accordingly. Firms involved in certain types of activities, making weapons. There are certain uh, firms which are manufacturing cigarettes, manufacturing alcohol and related products. Is it is it right or wrong? It's something has to be discussed. And other aspects. These are all business ethics aspects. To what extent the firm should be environmental friendly? These aspects have been discussed in many forums. These are things that we need to keep in mind. We'll look into some case studies over here also. As part of your internal audit of a housing finance company, you come across some checks issued but not yet presented on the month end, and it comes in the bank reconciliation statement. And typically it gets realized in the second month or third month. And you also see that later on that these all checks are the first dispersal checks when the new loan is, opened. More or more towards a month end, it's all been done. And of course, when you ask for explanation, the accountant they say that the loan has been sanctioned, but some small sign-offs are required or something like that, and the checks have to be handed over. But once the customer comes and signs, immediately you have to give the check. Therefore, the keeping the check ready, it is there with us, not yet given. And these are all part of your asset under management also, because the moment it comes into BRS, that means it has been accounted also. So what would be your reaction here as an internal auditor in this type of scenario? First question, is it right or wrong? First, we have to ask the right questions also to ourselves. Is it right or wrong? How do we go about? Any thoughts on this? First question is this something which you feel is right or wrong? In very plain language. Are we comfortable with the scenario, or do we have discomfort? Yes, we have a discomfort. It may not be exactly the right thing, it is wrong. But then they have explained to us that they kept the check ready because the moment the customer comes, the customer has not come or something like that. The red flag. Need to review the BRS for the whole period. Okay. In fact, the BRS is giving the information correctly. The check has been issued. They say the check issued and it has been accounted also, but not presented. So this is the aspect which is there because it cannot be part of AUM. Yes, that's a view which is there. So how do we react in this type of a scenario? It is not only AUM, but perhaps they are also charging interest on the customer on part of the AUM. So these are the aspects that we need to look into. How do we attack? How do we put our strategy and look at it? I'm not saying attack the wrong word, but how do we do our strategy? What is our uh, responsibilities, say, as an internal auditor in this aspect? Is something that we need to look into. Yes, whatever is there an issue? Who are the parties involved? What is the implication based on this? So the first thing is the implications would be the parties involved, of course, are the finance team, you have the operational team within the organization, and you also have the customer who's outside. You also have the regulator because some of these things are regulated also. So in these aspects, we identify the type of people who are involved, and then what the next thing that needs to be done in this scenario? Talk to the people, convey that this is not wrong, this is wrong, or there is a discomfort, or what should be done instead of doing it in this particular methodology, and see whether the particular division or department is warming up to that idea, or they are not doing that. If they are not, how do we escalate? So these are the different aspects that we need to look into. So this is one particular case I just thought we should discuss over here. In time span for the gratuity, when auditing gratuity payouts in a particular organization, the internal auditor finds out that when the final disbursement is done, he sees that the start date is not when the employees join the company, but the start date is from the confirmation date. And moment he raised this issue, the company says, the particular finance person, executive says, so this is what we have been doing for the last 30, 40 years. And not only here, us, all the group companies have done it. There are 30, 40 group companies. And also, sir, the confirmation period is only 3 months or 6 months like that. Not a big issue. What is the problem? How do we react to this scenario? Do we look at materiality? Any thoughts on this? Legal aspects, fairness to employee. Absolutely right, Mr. Shankar. One is, are we, payment of gratuity act is there, so are we complying with the law? Second is, are we fair to the employee? Employee may not be aware of it. He may think there is a small mistake or something like that. And also the implication could be that if the 6 months are taken in gratuity and all, if a half year is rounded off for the next year, so there could be somebody who has finished 11 years and 2 months, but then if this 6 months is added, it will become 11 years and 8 months, and it is rounded to the next year. That means he'll get one more year. Regulatory issue need to align to the senior management. Absolutely right. So once we put our conclusions, we should also talk to the senior management, alert them, and then get their views on why they have been doing, get their perception, have an open mind, get their perceptions, take legal opinion, or look into the case studies or something which is already there in this particular context. Sometimes the other side may not have been aware of this particular aspect. Once they're aware, they may say, yes, there are some case laws, we should not follow this. Then, if at all they feel that, yes, we should move from this scenario and improve the process or correct the process, Then the question again comes, another dilemma is, should we start it now or should we go back for some years, retrospective, prospective, how much retrospective? So all these aspects are again practical decisions that one need to take. All those things also will affect different people. And while doing that, the image of the organization is also very important. If you do it from now onwards, you can do it. Should you go back? Are you compelled to do that? What is the legal position there? So I just leave it here. I just thought I'll touch upon these various factors that one will have to consider in this type of a practical scenario. External service provider audit at festive time. We have gone for a particular audit in a different location, or it's an external service provider. So as per the contract, we have a right to go to his place and do the audit. It coincides with the Diwali time, and he's giving a kit to some of the departmental head senior people. So we also get one particular kit. There are small items there, but there is also some fairly expensive items like a leather laptop bag, mobile phone, earbud, and something like that. So how do we react to this situation? Should follow the organization's gift policy. Absolutely right. So there is a code over there in terms of what is the level of amount we can take gifts. If it goes beyond that, we should have a process to not accept those aspects. The materiality goes in two ways. What happens is, for us as a receiving entity, we have some materiality levels, but the other company says, sir, my materiality levels, this is what I give to my, there are different categories, category A, B, and C. You are in the middle category, this is what I give to everybody else also, so don't worry about it. It's what everybody gets. You are an arm's length as far as that is concerned, he says. But that may not be our aspect. So we need to look into the aspects. Any amount is avoidable from a third party? Yes, absolutely right. Maybe we should say, please leave out the laptop bag and the earbuds. They are very expensive. You are giving me some small items, fine. I could take it as a memento or remembrance. So there could be, and also report this to your internal person, whether even if you are not taken it, given it back, do it in a very proper manner so that they don't mistake it. And at the same time, also keep your seniors or somebody, inform them, and that also will be their part of your policy, how to go about also. Minor statutory non-compliances. There are a few branches having minimal employees not yet considered for profession tax. The state has some obscure act, some company tax has to be paid. Not many people are aware of it. But you know that this has to be paid because in your earlier organization, the company had paid it. When you come here and see, the same legislation applies to this company also, but they are not aware of it, they are not paid it. It cannot be very major amounts. So in these type of aspects, what do you do? Again, we need to make them understand that there are aspects which are there. Awareness is the first aspect, and then whether they're accepting or not, it all boils down to the compliance of laws and regulations aspect over here. There are code of ethics around this area also, which we need to look into. Professional opportunity when helping a peer firm. The internal audit firm that we are in has been approached by another firm from a different city. They say that in your city, there is a particular, I have a client and some audit has to be done for 3-4 days. I can't send people, the travel cost itself will outweigh the benefits. So why don't you do the audit and close it out? I'll tell the client also, and you have the engagement letter, putting the scope, everything. But everything is done with the three parties involved, but then the engagement letter between the local firm and the local unit alone. At that time, the local person says, I have some more work, some more professional work which is there, and all those things. So, how do we look at this aspect? After all, the other firm is not able to come locally. He already said that and he are already there. So, how do you react in this particular scenario when the local unit manager says, I need some further help in particular area? How do you react? Any thoughts on this, please? Can we say yes? Or should we say no? Disclose? Disclose to whom, sir? Is the EL and contracts have the terms and conditions covering this also? Then we can proceed, you are saying. Okay. Reach out to the original firm and seek their view. Right? So I think first thing we should say is when this manager tells us, we should say that, so we cannot take it directly. We have to wait. We'll first go back to the other firm, find out, and then come. Because ethically, it's not right to, even there's somebody who's referred you to a particular place, further professional work in that place should not be taken unless the other firm approves it or something, and that should be in writing also. So that's the right thing that you have got feedback in the chat box. Thank you very much for that. As part of the audit, you're going to a particular remote location or somewhere abroad. You've been given some particular area of HR employee cost. Suddenly you find that there are ESOPs also. You're not aware of it. And we find that there are only a two-member team, a junior and a senior. And I'm a senior in this audit, but I don't have much of knowledge about ESOPs and other aspects. For some reason, I don't have that. What do we do about it? The audit has to be completed within the next 1 week also. How do we do? Do I leave out the particular aspect saying it's not very material? Or should I take a ESOP book and read it and do it now? There are different choices here. One is actually materiality. We should see how material is this area. Second is take help from somebody who is a professional and leave it. The main important thing is we cannot just leave it over there. We have to reach out, ensure that, because one of the items in the code of ethics is competency. If we don't have competency, then either we build it up immediately or ensure that somebody with some competency is taking care of this, or see whether this particular area can be pushed to the next cycle of audit or something like that. So some action needs to be taken a particular firm, and then also ensure that you are trained for this particular area also later on. The consignment at the airport, as a member of the operations team, you have been assigned to responsible for seeing some inbound material purchases and other aspects. So some item has come, it has been very well anticipated. This particular machine has to come or some particular thing. But then the customs official is asking you to come and sort out some documentation. You know that if he is going to call you, it may involve some financial part on the back or something like that. How do we react to this when he's calling you? Should you go? Should you not go? How do we look at this? Any thoughts on this? Somebody could say that reach out to your seniors, or it could be that you say, I'll decide not to go and meet him, but send a letter asking him to explain what is the documentation requirements. Or it could be a situation where you go, and if it's a very small amount to be paid, you pay it personally to ensure that the organization is not involved. So any of these things can be done. I'm sure most of the organizations will have certain policies on this aspect where it is definitely these type of things are definitely not encouraged, and it's what you can no non-negotiable clause will be there that they cannot pay any amount this way. What if he says that that amount will be put as part of some charges in the invoice also, as part of the customs invoice? That is also another thing that sometimes it happens. other handling charges, something like that. So we need to be very sure that if somebody is asking us tomorrow, what are the other handling charges? If there is no answer to that, it is not there as per the customs policy, then even though somebody has tucked it away as a line item in the invoice, it is the core aspect remains the same, that this is a payment that ought not to have been paid. And therefore, whether this payment is made by the company or by the individual personally, it is still something which needs to be avoided. So there should be different ways of resolving this issue, writing to the uh, customs officials office, asking them to explain what exactly is required in a formal way. It may delay the whole aspects, but ultimately they will come around, and there is a possibility that you'll be able to clear the goods without things, or informally reaching out to the customs higher official from your companies. You have to seek help from your company, from the top management, how to resolve this issue, or to the Chamber of Commerce, other aspects. These are the various ways in which we need to do that. And going and making the payment personally or saying that it's part of the invoice and all may not help over here. Another example here is from the a customer is calling you for a function, his son's wedding. It's the customer to give a gift. So how do we do? Do we decline the invite, or you just do not go, or you go without a gift? Because in their thing, a gift as per their levels of thing, it may be a higher amount, which could be there. They're not expecting anything, but normally we say that we should give it beyond a certain amount, and that amount is not there as per the company policy. So do you top up the company policy amount with your own amount and give a gift? These are all daily conundrums which are there. I thought I'll touch upon that over here. There is no one right answer, but it's very clear that if there are certain written policies, we cannot cross the line over there. Business ethics, is it a oxymoron? Business and ethics, can they go together, is something which is there? And in this scenario, it was like, trust transparencies are something which are very important in the bank. The current scenario here, the manager of this bank was disbursing home loans by debiting suspense account and sanctioning it on later date so that the turnaround time is lesser, or disbursing home loans by debiting system suspense account. That's repeated. And the banker was selling cross-selling always happen in many banks with different agencies or their own group companies. Somebody is selling a ULIP to a senior citizen who may not actually require that, or a small branch deducting certain costs, as insurance costs or some charges. So all these things, the current scenarios, it could be there. And as internal auditor, when you come across these aspects, how do we look into it? How do we attack the problem? You have to first identify the issue, see exactly what is wrong, go to the particular person and talk to them. These are the things that we need to look into also. So if this type of scenario which is there, in that bank, they want to restore the code of ethics. They say that there are different strategies. In this particular case, they want to revamp the entire code of ethics. They want not just change the code, put a new code, issue it, other aspects. They also wanted to have a compliance person. And in this particular bank, what they did is they brought a strategy in terms of, they said they had a tagline 3C: connect, convey, convince. And they also had something like a quiz based on some daily events where they started training the employees, making them connect more to daily day-to-day activities, and giving some of these examples as case studies in the quiz and say what is the right way, what is the wrong way, thereby building pressure amongst the executives to ensure that they don't go in the wrong way also. So that way the long-term goal was also achieved. So there's another case study which was there in a particular place, where a real-time case study which was there in a particular organization, where they could slowly improve the moral compass of the entire environment, entire workforce also in the particular entity. Another aspect we talk about as part of ethics, another is independence. Independence, there is a view that a statutory auditor is independent, whereas internal auditor is not independent. That is a different thing. But again, in internal auditors, there are internal audit firms, external firms which do internal audit, and internal audit as a professional in the organization, whom he reports to, all those things are important, and thereby certain amount of independence is there, even though they report to the management. So this aspect also has to be looked into in terms of your conflict of interest, whether any of these things are compromised, a self-interest threat is there, a self-review threat. I'm not getting into these details too much. We know that these type of threats are there which will affect the independence factor. We need to ensure that we are not affected by any of these aspects. Advocacy threat, familiarity threat, how familiarity threat is taken care of by rotation, intimidation threat, somebody comes and threatens the professional. So there are safeguards which are also there for ensuring that all these threats are taken to acceptable levels before we take up the assignment. And part of the code of ethics will be to evaluate the independence vis-a-vis the existence of some of these threats and to what extent and level these threats are also there. So the safeguards could be in different categories. It could be that the statute or regulation itself can tell us in this type of scenario, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, or you can do a particular thing. For example, in the ICAI Code of Ethics, there are certain things which are acceptable for a unlisted company, but not acceptable for a listed company. I mean, they set the the barometer over there, and the safeguards contain rules of conduct issued by the professional organization, the regulator, like ICAI or IIA, like that. Safeguards contained in the internal working procedures and quality. These are the different categories of safeguards which are already there to ensure that these type of conflicts are taken care of. And typical example of safeguards created by statute or regulations on the corporate structure or governance of firms, statutory licensing of professionals. They will take care of the particular professional should be a licensed professional. For example, you take actuary, he should be from the Institute of Actuaries. So those membership should be there. This type of statutory licensing is already there. Regulations on educational training, continuing professional education, and external review by legally empowered third parties. There could be quality reviews, there are different types of quality reviews. For example, in ICAI, we have different types of quality reviews. You have NFRA now, you have quality review board, you have FRRB, peer review, those type of things. So these are all examples where safeguards are created by the entire framework itself, statute and regulation, to ensure that independence is maintained, the ethical standards are maintained also. Of course, the requirement to comply with professional standards, disciplinary procedures are there, and the rules on remuneration for different types of assignments. And in the firm's working procedure also, you have like structuring a firm to ensure that there are different divisions. There are Chinese walls. You have a system of maintaining a register for material personal interest in terms of independent declaration policy, internal peer review of your assignments which are there, recurring assignments, see changing the people who are responsible for that in terms of rotation, controls on acceptance of gifts or hospitality, as somebody mentioned, there should be rules and regulations for that also. These are all, if these things are there, it means that the particular firm or entity has a code of conduct, a code of ethics, which are there to be followed. A framework is available, which can be referred to by the individual and the leadership also. Some questions? This is in context of, you can say, as internal auditor or even a statutory auditor. Let us take a statutory auditor. Let us assume that there is a particular statutory auditor. Can he do accounting and bookkeeping services? Or even an internal auditor, can he do accounting and bookkeeping services? So I think the answer is very clear. No, there will be conflict. Administrative services, can they be done? The code of ethics are there in different regulators. They may spell out specifically or it has to be implied. Administrative services, people say that it can be done because it's all fairly routine. So the way in which they also rationalize this based on factors is that what is the amount of, so are we having what you call these particular threats? You go back to this self-interest threat, self-review threat, client conflict threat. If you're going to fill up some particular form, hey, income tax return, is there a self-interest threat? No. Self-review threat? No. Client conflict? It's a normal form based on certain laws and regulations. Are there a lot of judgments involved where advocacy could be there, or these type of aspects? So we need to look at each of this and rationalize and look at these scenarios and say whether it's allowed or not. Ideally, the code of ethics should give guidance. There are some regulators which say that administrative services, yes, you can do it because it is not affecting your all these threats. They give certain reasoning for that also. Valuation services, can you do it? Some says no, you may not be able to do it because as an auditor, you'll also look into impairment testing. You yourself cannot do the valuation and do the impairment testing. There is a conflict of interest. Advocacy threat is there. Tax services, again, there are different types of tax services which are there in terms of tax return preparation. It's fairly structured. You can do it. Tax calculation for the purpose of preparing accounting entries. A particular code says that you can do it, the entity can do it, but let the audit team not do it. There should be a separate team. There should be a Chinese wall. Or they say that they put further stringent measures. I say for a listed company, it cannot be done, but for unlisted company, it can be done provided different team does it. Tax planning advisory services, you can do. Certain tax advisory you cannot do because you can advise it. Some places they say you can advise a client between the choice, but he has to exercise the choice. Some places it may have an advocacy threat because you give advisory services. The basis of accounting is determined based on this tax advice. And when you do an audit, it becomes a circle, and therefore there could be conflict of interest. So these are different factors I'm just putting over here. Transfer pricing study. For a statutory auditor, transfer pricing study is something should we do because a study actually gives the arm's length basis or a benchmarking. Later on, the auditor may also sign a certificate as required by the tax laws of the country, saying that the transactions are as per the are basically on the arm's length. There is a particular requirement. So can you do both? Then again, it's a question over there. Sometimes the regulator will give clear-cut guidance also on these aspects also. From internal audit perspective, can we design processes? Can we document only the risk control matrices? Or can we do a system review, look into the application review and all those things? Some things are very much possible. But from a statutory audit angle, some of these things may be possible, some may not be possible also. Again, there's a fine line defining the statutory auditor and internal auditor also. But here, when you look at the context of IIA, internal auditors, most of these things can be done. In terms of designing processes, it may not be possible, I think, but other aspects, documenting, system review, and all definitely are possible items. No, Claire, I think many of you would have definitely know about this non-compliance to laws and regulations. So this is something which has come up, which is definitely applicable in international scenarios. It has also permeated India in different contexts. The main thing is that it's applicable for the international ethics standard which has come for auditors and all professional accountants. It's not from the audit, it is also people who are on the line, the accounting side also. And it's basically in terms of what actions we need to take for public interest when we become aware of some potential illegal act or something which has already had a non-compliance, either by a client if you are an external auditor or by your own employer if you are part of the organization doing the audit. So the definition basically talks about any act of omission or commission, intentional or unintentional. Even if they do it unintentionally, still it is to be looked into. It is contrary to the law, the non-compliance basically. And whether these acts of transactions are entered by the entity or the name of the entity or on its behalf by those charged with governance at a higher level, management or the employees, whoever does it, it's involved. External people, it's not involved. Non-compliance does not include personal misconduct, which is not related to the business activity. For example, somebody getting a traffic offense or hit and run issue, which is all personal misconduct, that will not affect this. That is not part of NOCLA. So this was developed basically to ensure that we have the duty of confidentiality, which is already there. We are supposed to keep the client thing confidential. But when we know that the client is doing something which is not as per law, should we blow the whistle or not? Should we go out? These are the aspects which are there. And many auditors, when they do not have proper guidance, they were just moving out of the scenario. Moving out will not observe also. That is also there. So NOCLAR gave very good guidance in these type of scenarios it says which are the situations where you can breach the duty of confidentiality. And it also said just resigning will not help. What you have to do before resigning or after, that's something which is there. Whether you resign or not, you have to do certain things. And also gave some guidance on how you go about the process of no-clear when you find out there is something which has not been complied with by the organization. So these are the objectives which are more or less same over there. And the outcomes are that should be done on a timely basis, then more on rectification, remediating and mitigating it, and not more like a knee-jerk reaction. And also this no-clear will also help in terms of deterring people from complying, doing unauthorized acts and other aspects. So the scope in this, the laws and regulations that have a direct effect on the material amounts in the financial statements, other laws and regulations, compliance of which is fundamental to the entity's operations to avoid material penalties. For example, in the determination of material amounts and disclosure of financial statements, it could be something like, say, income tax, indirect tax, which will definitely affect the financial statements. The second point could be something like adherence to pollution norms, other aspects, which if you don't do, it may affect the operations, it may even affect the going concern of the company and all those aspects. Small matters, not very clearly inconsequential aspects, and all those things are not in the scope of no-clear. So what should the auditor do when they come across? So they should raise the identified and suspected no-clear with the management and those charged with governance. Whoever finds they should go one level above, talk to them, clarify whether they have understood it correctly, or dispel their concerns, or like a query stage over there. If it is confirmed that there is a no-clear, advise the management to address the issue, not to go about doing this non-compliance anymore, and disclose the matter to the law regulation where it is required. So these things which are there, and then understand, comply with the thing, and if there are any prohibitions again tipping off, what do we do? Take, even if it's required, see whether it's applicable to the auditing standards which are there, communicate the matter in the context of a group, so in your own internal audit circle, other aspects, and also determine whether further action is needed. That depends on the response from the management also. And then if there is a breach, how do we disclose it to the authority? Documentation of the entire aspects in terms of what judgment we took to go ahead or not to go ahead in terms of to that statutory authority. This our framework of mind and the judgment take also should be documented so that later on the basis on which we acted should be available as a document. Our thoughts should be documented over here also. These are the things that NOCLAR is talking about. And you also have a lot of anti-corruption laws, FCPA, USA, Bribery Act in UK, all the Prevention of Corruption Act is there in India. And most of them cover the domestic bribery, corruption of foreign officials, facilitation payment, compliance, and they also look at compliance programs. And the regulators with jurisdiction to prosecute also is there. Penal provisions are also there. The IIA's Code of Ethics basically have the integrity that the trust factor is something which is very, very important. They have to do the performance of the work with honesty, diligence. These are the things which are exhorted in the code also. Observe law, make disclosures, they not be knowingly be party to any illegal activity. These are all there the code of ethics in terms of the integrity aspect. In terms of objectivity, it's important that we have a professional objectivity in evaluating and communicating information, balance assessment aspects. They should not have participate in any activities or relations that may have a conflict. Should not accept anything that may have an impairment tomorrow. These are the aspects which are talked in terms of objectivity. Confidentiality also is very important. How you keep whatever the knowledge you get as part of the audits, you have to keep it confidential. Some of them may be even price sensitive information. We have a lot of confidentiality laws also in different parts of the world. And competency, as I said, applying the knowledge skill set, and we should only engage in services where we have the necessary skill sets and ensure that we take the internal audit services in accordance with the international standards for the professional practice, and also have a continuous improvement in your proficiency, continuing education, other aspects also. And you have the IIA guide. I just thought I'll touch upon this over here. It also talks about the same aspects and how the chief executive should have, what the different team members should have in terms of integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, and competency. And ethics and confidentiality also go together, a lot of things. As I said, there are a lot of data protection legislations in UK. We have the Digital Data Protection Act in India. And the most important thing is people have the trust on auditors that they protect the privacy. Very similar to a doctor or the banking industry. We don't expect doctors to tell our medical information to anybody, even to relatives, they may not say, unless we are authorizing it or something like that. Even the banking aspects also, they don't give it to anybody, even to the spouse, they will not give it. So very similar to that, we should have the mindset as auditors to ensure that we protect the privacy of our clients and ensure confidentiality of data that include like things like don't speak about any client information in public spaces. Ensure that your files, both your electronic files and even files that we did when you do an audit. For example, when you do a HR audit, we may have taken some employee files. We can't leave it open or even in a closed place, just on the desk and go for lunch. We have to keep it in a safe place. These are the things that we have to train our office people also. Don't disclose to anyone other than the client, not even to the client's uh, relative, close relative, unless it is authorized. And the general balancing factors are you give the least information to as many less people in shortest time. Need to know basis is something which is very important. And you also have the 90-10 rule where it says that 10% of the confidentiality only are technical in terms of encryption and all. 90% relies on good practice. How we have data classification, policies, incident reporting, using our judgment and common sense, and be aware of the confidentiality aspects. I also want to touch upon the ethics case procedure that IIA has in terms of if there's a complainant, there's a review, there's a process which is there as per the IIA Code of Ethics. I just thought I will touch upon this in terms of you have an appeal procedure, hearing, determination, all these aspects are there. I also thought I can take a couple of case studies before we wind up in terms of personal relationship and ethical values. We find that this particular case is a person is, pursuing MBA. He wants to job, very needy person. He has to clear 2 exams. Few days before the exams, he asks for money, and he says, "I need the money to purchase the question paper." So, would it be right to lend money to him? Is a moral dilemma. I think it's little easy. Identify the moral dilemma faced by you, or analyze your role as a friend. These are the things. Yes, moral dilemma is there in terms of he's asking for it as a friend. He needs it to. He has to pass the exam. Only then he'll be able to support his family. Other aspects are there, but at the same time he's not doing the right way. So emotional support, empathy, trust. If you say I'll not give the money, that he may go the other way around also. So these aspects are there. How do we look at it? How do we approach the situation? Is what we are talking about here. So ultimately, we say that he should adhere to the correct means. He should not cheat for the sake of passing the exams. Short-term gains are not important. Long-term aspects are very important. So those are the aspects where we have to steer him towards those aspects rather than give the money to him. Another place is restricted knowledge. A case study where ABC is an investment advisor, a close friend of another person who is the CEO of a corporation. They find when they were about talking in a private conversation, they find the XYZ says that his corporation is likely to lose an important lawsuit, and this information is not available in public domain. Now that ABC knows about it, he advises clients to reduce the investment in XYZ corporation. So obviously there's a violation. So what is the violation? Preservation of confidentiality, independent subjectivity, material non-public information. So these are the aspects which are there. So according to me, it is confidentiality which is there and also non-public information aspects which are there. So we can actually, there is one real-time case study which came up in Pricewaterhouse PwC tax scandal which was done in Australia, where there were accounting firms who were giving tax advice to the government on writing the tax law. At that time, they came to know about certain information which they shared with their clients and became a big issue also. Last two case studies. This is aspect of you are a self-employed consultant engaged by the senior management team for a charity, write an internal audit report on some internal controls and all those aspects. And you find that there are unauthorized payments made by the former trustees using the charity credit card and all. You have reported this in your internal audit report also. The report is placed to the board, but you suspect that they will not act upon the recommendations. They don't want to have a negative image. So what do we do in this aspect? Is a question that we are looking at. So the first thing is we have to ask ourselves the right questions. As a professional accountant, what are the principal features more permanently, what fundamental principles that we should look into? What should be the key consideration if they have a dilemma? And what course of action should we take? These are the aspects that I think we should, the thoughts that should come to the mind. And here, key fundamental aspects would be integrity, confidentiality, professional, all these things are in the code of conduct. So can we just overlook this unauthorized? We have done the duty, we are given the report. That's it. Can we just keep quiet? It's very confidential. Whom do you turn for advice without telling putting the cat out of the bag? Do you have whistleblowing responsibilities? Professional behavior, you must comply with the relevant laws and regulations. What are your responsibilities? So do we go to a legal person, ask for help? Trust to compliance. There could be intimidation threat also. How do we look into those aspects? So the main considerations are identify the facts. What are the facts? Formal trustees have created the fraud. That is the first aspect. You brought it to the attention of the board. Their priority is to protect the reputation. And they may not take action against the former trustees. They may just try to bury it also. So you have to consider the ethical policies of the charity. They may have some framework. How do you look into that? Then look into the affected parties. Affected parties are, of course, you, the auditor, the senior management team, former trustees, board, all these different people are there, different players in the whole matrix. And who should be involved in the resolution? We should first approach the senior management team and one of the current trustees if it is possible. And if you are an internal auditor or something, also involve the auditors if it is possible also. These are all the possible course of action that could happen. You meet your responsibility to charity by providing the board with a report. But we have knowledge of an illegal act, then whistleblowing thing we have to look into. And the extent of fraud is also not insignificant because they feel that it's not just the money, it is also the question of qualitative aspects in terms of negative publicity. So it could be material in terms of the implications. Even if the amount is small, it could have a big impact in terms of getting the image of the non-profit organization, the future donations that may come. So it is important. It's a vital aspect. It's quite material. So you should possible action could be that you should talk to them, have a meeting, highlight the report content, nudge them, tell them you yourself have a code of conduct or code of ethics or this particular code. Look at all these aspects and then look at whether you have to go into NOCLAR or other type of aspects and see whether you need to get into this. And then you should also, in terms of aspect, determine whether as per the law and public interest, should you disclose this particular fraudulent activity? Take, uh, you know, uh, help from a trusted advisor or from a legal attorney. And if the trustees are still unwilling to move on this, what is our own position? What do we do? Should we resign from this particular job or role? But even if we resign, should we first inform about this aspect? These are different thought process that should be there also. Similarly, the last case study I just will bring it to the attention is when you're an accountant in a particular school governing body. Here they have come up with a requirement of some major repairs from about 50,000 pounds. But a particular person says, committee member says that I will be able to do it for 45,000. And they say, okay, let us do it for 45,000 and close it out. They don't want to go for a tender and other aspects. So that is where our concern lies. So even though the estimate is 50 and somebody says I'll do it for 45, lesser than that amount, we are not going through the established process. So is that the right way of doing things? How do we look into this? So as a professional accountant, you're part of the team. It is your duty to ensure that the governance aspects are taken care of, other aspects. So what are the fundamental principles? What could be the key considerations? What is the action that we need to look into? Again, the same factors of integrity, objectivity. So by not having a due process, can we give integrity? Is the objectivity there in terms of governance to demonstrate that the decision has been taken without implementing a tender process? The answer is there very clearly no. Professional behavior in terms of the voluntary appointment is just as important as if it is a paid employment. We can't say I've been voluntarily appointed, so it's not a big thing. Even here, the professionalism should be here because you as a professional are being invited here for the value add over there. So these are different aspects that we need to look into. Identify the facts, schools' policies, what is it regarding tenders? Do they have a code of conduct? And try to see who are the affected parties, ourselves, the members of the committee, the builder, the governors, and also the other local builders, because they stand to lose from this also. General, it's a public interest entity. General public are also involved in these aspects. So we should see the type of action is talk to the team, nudge them towards getting into a formal tender process. Even talk to the builder who said, I'll do it for 45,000. Explain to him the benefits of going through a process rather than doing it outside the process. Even though the intention would be good, it is not, it is better to go through the established route. It's something that we need to look into. So these are the things which are there in terms of proper decision-making process and to ensure that the compliance is there as per the code of ethics. And at the end of it, as usual, they say that if it is still not done, see whether you have to step out of that particular role. So that is always a last option, which is not to be exercised or even discussed in the beginning. We have to see how we can remedy the measure rather than moving out of the situation. So the last question for us is, yes, ethics is mandatory for all this CPE and hours and all those things. But how mandatory is it for us in our life? That is a question that we have to be asking. And thank you for your patient listening. I hope I've done justice to this particular topic, which all of us know, but we just need some discussion in this aspect. Thank you very much. Are there any specific questions? I'm willing to take it up.
Oh, that was a fantastic webinar, sir. Thank you so much. We have another 10 minutes. If any participants have any questions, please put it on the chat box. Or if you have any observations or would you like to add anything further to what we just heard, please feel free. I think in these 2 hours, sir, you have already given us so many examples and made us think so much on the decisions that we have to take even with these examples itself. Very, very enlightening. I think it was a very true litmus test of what's happening. So we have a first question, sir, if you would want to take that.
As per DPDP Act on Privacy, government can have access to the personal data of citizens. Is it ethical? Should law supersede ethics? It's a very interesting question. Typically, a lot of places government have had access to the data of citizens and other aspects. Of course, it raises, unless there are conspiracy theories and other aspects, there's always a given situation, but we can debate on it and who has access to the data behind in the government. What are the procedures over there? Is there a for what is the data used for or unlocked? These are the aspects that we need to have more discussion on that aspect. If and if it can, there could be. I'm sure there have been a lot of RTAs also on these aspects, and the type of controls that the government has, and the proposed usage where they can use it also. This is a topic. This is something which is very debatable, but I think today there are many countries who have taken that the law should supersede this, and they don't view it as a unethical aspect over there also.
Excellent. So I think the rest of them are just testimony of the fantastic session you have delivered, sir. Okay. In which case, let me then deliver the formal vote of thanks. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashish Jawar, and on behalf of the Institute of Internal Auditors Madras chapter, it is indeed my honor and privilege to deliver this vote of thanks. And thank you so much, sir, for this very, very insightful session on a very important topic called ethics. First and foremost, very, very heartful gratitude to you, sir, the speaker, Mr. Mahesh Kannan. I think you clearly, your expertise, your passion, and your deep understanding on ethics has not only enriched our knowledge, but has truly also inspired us to reflect on the core principles prescribed by the Institute of Internal Auditors. I think today's session has definitely, sir, reinforced the significance of integrity, accountability, and transparency. I think you have touched upon so many topics, clearly some very powerful statements, which I could take away as doing the good when even no one is watching. It is extremely simple, very, very powerful, though. I think very consciously and subconsciously, if we follow this, it would be amazing. I think the everyday ethical dilemmas that we go through is very, very evident, even with these several examples that you took us through, sir. I think the references to the Holy Scriptures is paramount, no doubt about it. And I think the most important bit before I conclude is, of course, trust of an auditor should never be breached. I think people trust us, and we should withhold that, and we should ensure that that trust has never been breached. On that note, I would also like to express my appreciation to all the participants and the attendees for their active participation and engagement during this session. Brilliant engagement and feedback. Thank you so much. A special thanks to the organizing team, Mr. Vidyadharan sir, Mr. Sarvanan, Deepika madam, and our beloved president, Sri S.K. Rangaswamy sir. As we conclude, once again, thank you so much, Mr. Mahesh Krishnan, for your valuable contribution to this event. All the participants would receive their 2 CPR credits post this event and would be confirmed through an email with a PDF attachment on them. On that note, thank you everyone and wish you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.